We're just connecting. Okay. Welcome everyone to the Triangle Association of Freelancers. This is our April meeting. We're excited to be here. Our second Zoom meeting that we've had. I'm Karin Weiberg. I'm just playing host and facilitator tonight. You won't have to listen to me too much longer. If you need help, you can connect with me. Rita Lewis is also set up as a host. We have a few more controls over the meeting so we can help resolve issues. But the important part is our speaker. Our speaker tonight is Alison Hill. Alison is a veteran journalist and producer. She's covered politics for over 2 decades on both sides of the Atlantic as a newspaper reporter, television investigative journalist, TV producer, independent filmmaker, freelance writer, and BBC radio commentator and analyst. So she's covered it all. Alison is going to talk about some of the elections and issues and politics she's covered, the politicians she's interviewed, and some of her escapades. She will talk about how political reporting has changed over the past decade and how various forms of new journalism have affected the news cycle. We'll talk about some different media platforms and forms of coverage for political topics and how we as freelance writers can approach political coverage. So please welcome Alison Hill for an exploration of political journalism.
Okay, hi there. I'm gonna put my glasses on. Hey, what I'd like to start off with is just a question that you guys, everybody can put in the chat. You can think about this. You don't have to answer it straight away. Where do you get your news sources? What is your most trusted news source? And if you want to say why, you can say so. And how often do you keep up with politics? And what do you think of political coverage now? And I just wanted to start off, look, this is a college course book that I had. I don't know if this is probably backwards, but American Politics and Society. I was thinking about my relationship with US politics, and it's actually been longer than 20 years. I did politics, I forgot, I did American Studies, which included politics, so I have a minor in politics, American politics, and look what I found in there, US Customs form, how interesting. And so I'll start off. Karen, can you bring up some of those slides, please?
Yeah, and you can see, can you see in the chat, Alison, that you're getting some answers here, like local ABC channel, NPR, BBC are my most trusted sources, Reuters,
oh wow,
Washington Post, New York Times, Apple News, PBS, a lot of the major, outlets
awesome.
there.
Awesome. Hey, how about I start? Okay, let me start with my story. I have been covering politics in various mediums and in various forms for 20 plus years. God, I don't know, 20 something years. I started off in as a newspaper reporter. I got thrown in the deep end. I covered this huge area called the Chain Peninsula in Wales, and it was all agriculture and sailing. That's, you know, it was very coastal, so a lot of stuff, sailing stuff, farming stuff, and I had to cover the local council meetings. Now I'm very young, and I'm sitting there, and it's inevitably a planning issue, and I'm sitting there going, I do not know what they are talking about. I have no idea. So I looked around the room, and I found somebody with the nicest eyes, the kindest eyes, kindest face, and I approached him and I said, do you mind? You know, I'm a trainee journalist, although I'm actually in charge here of this section of the newspaper, but can you just explain me what's going on? And he became a trusted source, one of the local politicians that I used to go to all the time for quotes and and etc. So that was my introduction, and I was only a reporter on that newspaper for less than a year. And the extent of the reporting on politics really was local politics, which is very, very important, of course. And I think people tend to forget about local politics when we're talking about politics. Everybody thinks, oh gosh, you know, presidential election, and maybe more so now, midterm elections, right? And they always think in terms of the big picture instead of the local level. You know, you've got community politicians, you've got local politicians, state politicians, etc. And that's something, if you are interested in covering politics, that you can look at to start, and it's accessible. I also used to be the producer director of the town of Chapel Hill's town council meetings. And again, a lot of planning issues, but they're very important. If you look at magazines like Raleigh Magazine, for instance, they cover a lot of planning stuff, and those meetings are open to everybody. So, you know, go to your local council meeting, see what's going on, and you can find stories there. And these local politicians are very approachable. I mean, it's in their interest, right? And you can make really good relationships in that way by just going to these things, to these events. But anyway, so that was after that I was an investigator. I became an investigative journalist with a single issue 30-minute show called it was in Welsh. It was for ITV, which was HTV back then, which was the BBC rival back then. BBC is funded by TV licenses, so people pay to fund the BBC. The ITV was the commercial channel, so we had to earn our keep. And so we were a team of investigative journalists, which is very, very different. We're not news. I never worked in a newsroom per se. Investigative journalism, of course, is in-depth research. I mean, the one program took me a whole year to research. You know, intermittently I did other things, but we did outside broadcasts, which is basically you take the van out and you set up in a hotel or whatever kind of building, and you get politicians on a show, and you have a host talking, you know, questioning the politicians on the set, and a studio audience. And so we did a lot of those. And of course, we went after, because we were an expose show, we went after politicians all the time. They hated, some of them hated us. So, but some of them were very nice, of course. And there was very, very funny incidents that I want to share. For some reason, I was always invited to European Union events. And so I used to go. If I were invited, when I was a journalist and a producer, if I was invited somewhere, I used to always go, because you never know who you'll meet and what kind of stories you can pick up and what kind of contacts. When I started in journalism, sorry, I dropped my glasses here. When I started in journalism, the first thing the head reporter did was give me a contacts book and say, you just fill this thing up. You're going to need these people to get their opinions and their side of the story, or experts, etc. And I still have my original contacts book. It's in pieces, but I still have it. And so I went to the European Union dinner, or whatever. It was like a lot of little bitsy food. And I was eating a vol au vent. I was talking to somebody, some politician, I guess. And I didn't know I was like 25. And having fun. I had a really good job, and I was very lucky to get it. It was very highly competitive. But anyway, so I was at this event, and you know, like, oh, cool. And I ate a vol au vent. I don't know if you know what a vol au vent is here, but it's like a little pastry thing with a like a prawn, what you call a shrimp over here, right? And a little round pastry thing with a prawn stuck inside, right? And I was just standing there, and Neil Kinnock comes up to me, and Neil Kinnock would be like in America if John McCain or somebody who's ran for president, someone prominent, because he was the leader of the British Labour Party and if the Labour Party had won, because it's a parliamentary system, it's different than what you have over here. But if the Labour Party had won, he would have been Prime Minister. So this was a would-be Prime Minister standing right next to me, Neil Kinnock. And I had just bitten into my vol au vent, and this shrimp went flying. It was hilarious. And he's like this very, very famous person who's actually shorter than me. And it was very, very embarrassing. But he talked to me for ages. And it was just fascinating, because I'm a little nobody from nowhere, really. And here's this prominent politician talking to me. And it was an amazing experience for however old I was, 25, 26, very, very young. So that was very interesting. And we used to doorstep politicians, which means basically if there's a scandal and somebody has refused an interview, you watch them. You have teams of people with walkie-talkies. This is investigative journalism, well, the way it used to be. And we had lawyers, so don't try this at home. And so you follow people, and you follow them. You make sure you know where they live. Yes, I'm sorry, we used to follow people, and we'd have teams. Okay, he's left his home, and then the other person, you say, oh, he's going on this street, and then he arrives just before he arrives at, you know, his workplace or something. There would be a camera person, a reporter there, and they would come. It's like a Michael Moore move, you know, like Michael Moore used to do, catch people when they're just going into the door of their office. So they're forced to answer questions, even if they don't answer questions. But, you know, it was good television. And so that's why people didn't like us, because we were an expose show. Now, when I went to, after that, I immigrated to America, and eventually got a job with PBS as their public affairs producer. I produced 3 weekly shows, 2 of them live call-in shows, and 1 of them was taped. And I could do what I pleased. I chose the topics. I found the guests. I was in charge of definitely the live shows, and we'd have politicians coming and going all of the time. And sorry, I forgot one story about Britain. I did have tea with a member of Parliament in the House of Commons once, and I interviewed him. There's a little green, if you've ever watched British news when they're interviewing somebody outside the House of Commons, there's a little green across the road from the House of Commons. And that's where all the journalists interview their subjects, the members of Parliament. So I got to do that, and it was really exciting going into the House of Commons. But anyway, let's go back to America, because we're talking about U.S. politics.
How do I do a screenshot? Do you mind if I take some screenshots so they're not stupid?
Yeah.
Do I just press the home and this at the same time? That's the way I do it on my phone.
Yeah, that's
Okay, should I, do you need some time?
I think you're okay, Allison.
Okay, all right, I wasn't sure
I'm
what was
looking
going
to
on,
see who
sorry.
that was and if they need to be muted, so.
Okay, sorry.
Keep going.
Okay, where was I? Oh, and in Wales too, we have different rules. We have the equal time laws. You do over here, but they're very convoluted over here. For network, for cable television and network, actually PBS is different. But over there, we had 4 main parties really. In Wales, you have Labour and Conservative, and you have Plaid Cymru, which is the Welsh Nationalist Party, or Party of Wales, and you have the Lib Dems, the Liberal Democrats. That's hard to say with a Welsh accent. So the Lib Dems. However, we had to, if we were doing a show with a representative of each party on, it was always a half-hour show for us, we had to include whoever else was running. You know, I mean, within reason, not the loony party, and there was a loony party running, and we never interviewed the National Front or anything like that. Because they were not a legitimate party, although they have won a seat, which is incredibly awful. But anyway, so I had to, we had to we had to give 1 minute to the Green Party, we had to give 1 minute to the Natural Law Party. And because I've practiced transcendental meditation since I was 17, I got to interview the Natural Law candidate. But anyway, so I just think that's an interesting difference, because what we've seen lately is no, we don't get representation of third parties over here, which unless it was my show on PBS, in which we did, we always included the Libertarian Party and the candidate and or representative, and the Green Party as well, which is, in my opinion, fair. But what we did a special studio audience show. I remember it was 2004, and I was doing a couple of different themes, and one was young voters, and it was very, very interesting because I got to go. I don't know if anyone has been to Denver, but if you know the 16th Street Mall in Denver, it's a big, the big downtown area, beautiful in Denver. But I went there. I went on different campuses to do vox pops or person on the street interviews with young voters, asking them. It was Bush's re-election in 2004, and it was just really, really interesting, talking one-on-one. You know, instead of calling people will be on my show every minute, I got to go out, and this was all my doing. It was my idea. Like I said, with PBS, I had that freedom to do this. And so I went out on the street and I talked to young voters now, so 30 and under. Well, that's how I classified it. And I was only, what, 30 something at the time too. So, but it was very, very interesting to get that dynamic, because you don't hear their voices very often. And that led me to interview, get a one-on-one interview with Jason Alexander, you know, George Costanza from Seinfeld, who was a really, really nice guy. And he was campaigning for young voters to register to vote in that election season. And so he was doing tours of different universities, and he was at the University of Denver, and I got to interview him. Very nice guy. And I also got to interview Michael Moore, and at the Bowling for Columbine. I know I'm veering off politics, but it's a political issue, gun control. And I'll talk about this in a minute too, when we're talking about different aspects and different forms and different topics, political topics. It's not always about elections and, you know, who the candidates are. There's issues, there's ballot issues, there's national issues like gun control and healthcare, which can, you know, they can swing elections, and abortion, of course, they can swing or influence elections very much so. So that's an important thing to remember too. It's not just, you know, who's running and, you know, who's winning. And although that's mostly what we hear about. And we'll talk about this too in just a minute, like how journalism has changed from, you know, just the mainstream traditional television, newspapers, magazines, and radio. You know, when the internet came, that really completely transformed journalism, as we all know, and it transformed political coverage, as we all know, as well. And it's very, very influential. And, you know, people go to a news source and they're just hearing what they want to hear if it's a particular type of news source online. And so they're not getting a balanced view. And that's what we were trying to do when I was working at PBS. And of course we had to, because the FCC rules as well, but it was really, really always about a balanced panel. And I covered stuff that a lot of people didn't touch, like just right after the Iraq war. I covered the Patriot Act. Not a lot of people were talking about that. And I covered the Iraq war extensively from various angles. In fact, my phone was tapped at one point because I was, one of my regular guests was an imam, Muslim imam from Iraq, who's actually tortured by Saddam Hussein's people. And he was still, he was against the war, and he was very outspoken about that. But every time I called him up, his name was Ibrahim, and every time I called him up, we'd hear this click and like an echo, and they were listening in. He said, "Oh, can you hear them?" I said, "Yeah, it's been happening to me. It's been always happening to me." He said, and it used to happen to me at home as well when the BBC used to call me. Same thing would happen, probably because I was speaking Welsh, and they couldn't recognize the language, or just I was maybe on a list, who knows? Because a lot of there was this big, huge thing in Denver when I was there. It was called the Spy. What was it called? No, Denver Spy File. Where people, including journalists, I was probably on it, but I didn't check because I didn't want them to, if I wasn't on it, I didn't want to give them reason to put me on it because I wasn't on it. But a lot of journalists, especially the indie journalists, like the equivalent, there's this paper called Westwood in Denver, which is equivalent to Indie Week. And she was on it, and she was a guest on my show. So if she was on it, well, you know, anyone who really had been to some kind of a protest, like an anti-war protest, or had been vociferous about their opinions, would find themselves on this Denver Spy File list. And we did a show about that too. And we did a show about domestic spying. We did a lot of shows about, I had a special show about constitutional issues. And I did get to go and film some rallies, some political rallies. For some reason, the Republicans always, because George Bush was in office right then, you had to have a background check, so you couldn't just go to the event with the press pass. You had to have a background check that took 3 days, and they always sent me the invitation 2 days beforehand, so I was never able to go. But I did go to John Kerry's twice, and I got to meet him briefly and shake hands with him, and which was very interesting. And we covered all kinds of topics. We covered local politics. We covered international politics. I mean, I'd be a normal day, Wednesday, that was our show day, at our channel was, full of politicians, local politicians, some of them that are actually prominent, like Ken Salazar. I think he was the Interior Secretary for Barack Obama. He used to come in our studio all the time, and John Hickenlooper, who actually ran for president. I think he tried way there at the beginning. He was the governor later. I remember filming him when he was running for mayor of Denver. And then Gary Hart to someone else that I spoke to on various occasions. So all these people, always very prominent politicians. Dick Lamb was another one, who's a Democratic governor in the past. And they were all very friendly. And I used to get invited to, it was hilarious. I didn't know it was a fundraiser event. So I just went, and it was, there's this really posh area of Denver called Cherry Creek, and, multi-million dollar houses down there. And there was an event in one of these houses, and it was a political event for some candidate. And they had invited me, so I went, thinking, it was just an event, but it was actually fundraising. I walk in the door, and they said, "How much can we put you down for?" And I went, "What? Your donation?" And they went, "Oh, let me think about that, and I'll get back to you." I said, And so I hung out there for a while, and beautiful house. Big Buddha statue. It was weird. It was just weird being there, because there were people that were actually regulars on my show coming in and out, and I'm going, oh my God, I know these people. And it's like, I'm in this multi-million-dollar mansion. But anyway, so that was interesting. It was just interesting who I got to meet, just because of where I work, not who I was, but where I worked. Because we had, our shows were, if I can find it, we were always in, this is from the Rocky Mountain News. We were always in there because I made friends with the TV and radio guy there, Dusty Saunders. Anybody? Is anybody from Denver here? I think one person is. I remember someone talking about the Rocky Mountain News, but anyway, he used to say something nice about, you know, I wish I could find the quote, if you'll bear with me for a minute, because let's see, he basically said, you know, the discussions on Channel 12, which was the name of our channel then, they get heated, but people don't talk over each other like they do on cable news. Something to that effect. He was basically giving us a compliment. But anyway, and that's what we did. And then later I did a show about international issues called Global Agenda. And my host, who was a previous host, who hosted a show I did on constitutional issues, which I learned a lot about. We did eminent domain, we did domestic spying, we did the Patriot Act, we did all these kind of things that you don't hear about in depth, and you don't, you know, unless you go looking for it. We did all this stuff, and I tried to make it interesting. And it's hard with the roundtable show. It's talking heads, you know, people don't stick around. So I used to do a lot of what we call rollings, you know, bring a little segment in just to keep people's interest and keep them on. But one show that we did which was very, very effective, was the call-in show. We get people calling in all irate, and I had a very testy host. He was uncontrollable, and so it was good television, but it was very nice, clean fun. And we didn't break any FCC rules, except for once when somebody said nasty words and we didn't get it in time, but on a live show. But anyway, so that was my producer career right there with PBS. And I'm trying to think what else happened to me. I was filming at a John Kerry rally, and I don't know if you've ever been to a rally and come across Secret Service people, but they're mean people. Oh my goodness me, they're so mean. I was just standing there, and this Secret Service lady came over to me and said, "Get over the line." And I'm going, "What?" She said, "Get over the line." And she pointed at the floor. I had 1 foot over this yellow line. And she said, "Don't get off that. If you don't get on the other side of that line, I'm going to arrest you." So, and I've heard that happening to a lot of people too. Although, and here's the fun bit. I went indie after that. I went freelance, and I did a lot of indie stuff, independent stuff. One of them was a show called Drop Frame. Actually, we got an Emmy nomination for that one, but that was about independent film. But I also did some totally different shows about the nature of reality, which was the dichotomy to politics, right? When I was, we moved to Asheville, and I got to film Bill Clinton. And I went to Hillary Clinton rally. And before this, I had a press pass. I had a Colorado press pass, which you usually do need to get into these events. And it had expired. And of course, it's Colorado. Although I used to, you know, just hold the Colorado bit and just show press pass, and they usually were okay with that. But one time I wanted to go and film Hillary Clinton, and this must have been in, God, I can't remember. Was it 2008? Which one was it? I think, yeah, 2008. And they wouldn't let me in. And I'm going, I was going to do a show and put it on community television because I got to use their equipment. And this is another good thing. If you are good at video and you don't have the equipment, there's usually, I think there's still one in Chapel Hill, Community Access Channel. They let you borrow all their equipment, including the edit suites, and they teach you how to do everything. What I wanted was the equipment because it's just not viable to buy our own equipment anymore because it'll change in 4 weeks. But anyway, so I had all this equipment and I was ready to go film Hillary Clinton and they refused to let me in. And I said, you know what? It's just as important to let the community television, the little guys in, your Democrats, you should be allowing all voices access to this public event. And I was trying to explain to them, freelance journalists can't get press passes. And I'm just as legitimate as all of these people. I have a background in journalism and I'm trained. And I went off and the guy was just standing there. And then this lady that knew me from a radio station said, yeah, let it in. And it was becoming like a, yeah, the people, voice of the people, right? And finally, the PR guy scuttled over and said, just let it in, just let it in, let it go, let it in. And so I got to film at the Hillary Clinton rally. And then she went outside afterwards, right? And she was within these barriers. And so the crowd is here, and inside the barriers, she's walking and she's, you know, greeting the crowds and shaking hands and etc. And all the press is inside the barriers. And again, I wanted to get in, but they said, where's your press pass? And Mr. PR guy came running in there and said, let her in, let her in, let her go anywhere, let her go anywhere. And so I was basically like this far away from Hillary Clinton, like, you know, like paparazzi. I got some really close-up shots of her, closer than I think CNN, who are behind me, who are very rude, by the way. CNN people were very rude there. But anyway, so I talked my way into a Hillary Clinton rally and got in, it worked. And so you really have to be, what's the word? Ballsy, right? Sorry. You just have to be quite aggressive if you want some of this stuff. I don't do it anymore. I was younger then, and I didn't have a kid. But anyway, let's see, what else have I done? Oh, BBC. I've been doing BBC interviews for 20 years. They call me whenever something's going on, and I've been covering the primaries here in America for the past few months. And of course, I've been covering coronavirus. When I say cover, I'm not reporting. I'm I call myself a commentator because I'm reflecting on what other reporters have been saying and other pundits have been saying, and then it's not my opinion, but you know, if they do ask, what do you think is the reason for this or that and the other, I mean, I don't say, you know, I don't like this candidate or whatever, but I do offer analysis and commentary about different aspects of the races and different whatever's going on, really. And I've been talking about the coronavirus. So let's get to, I think that's it for that. Let's get to the PowerPoint, Karen.
Okay.
I can't see anyone here. It's like I'm talking to like just two people. It's like I can't see. There she is.
All right, I'm gonna see if I changed it back. So we've had Alison on the spotlight so that you are all being able to see her. And if you want to go back into gallery view, you might need to press the gallery view button that's up in the right-hand corner. And what I'm going to do now is share my screen so that you can see the PowerPoint. Cross my fingers that it works.
Okay, so we've okay, so here we go. Here's some things to consider if you are interested, or even if you already do. I apologize if you already do this, but these are some questions to ask yourself if you are indeed intending to write about politics. And just a sort of a warning, a caveat here. When you do write about politics, and I have written it, and have written opinion pieces on various websites, and I've also done listicles. Oh, I forgot about my freelance writing. Oh my gosh, this is a writers group, and I forget about my writing, political writing experience. Sorry. Yes, I used to write listicles, political and entertainment listicles for a website, and for another website, I used to do political opinion pieces, and for yet another one, kind of the same thing, sort of reported essays, opinion, etc. And this was back, and some of these were. Two of them were back in 2009, I think. And even back then, right, you really, really have to have a thick skin if you're going to write about politics, especially if it's opinion, and especially if people can add their comments down, because people are vicious. And you know, you've seen Facebook. You know, if you read comments on any article, you know, you really, really know. Either you ignore all the comments, or you just really have to have a very thick skin for them not to affect you, because sometimes they get personal. A lot of people have said some nasty things to me, and over the years, and especially, you know, you're putting yourself out there, and you're putting your opinions out there, and you know, you just have to look after yourself. Because these things do get quite nasty, quite testy. How about testy for the word? So if you wanted to pursue, if you have thick skin and you can take it, you can take the criticism and insults, etc. And some people will say, yay, I totally agree with you. And then you go, oh my God, thank God, one person agrees. So if you want to do political writing here, some of the topics, you know, you need to ask yourself what kind of political writing you want to cover.
So Alison?
Yes, can you hear?
Alison, do you want me to launch the polls so people can respond to the poll?
Do you want me to just go through it first? Talk about it first? Oh, I echoed.
Okay.
I'll just go through it first real quick. Because I was going to talk about different mediums.
So can you see the screen? Can you see the screen I have up of the question about what topic would you want to cover?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where I have a poll for that question.
Okay, well, yeah, go ahead. But can I still talk about it?
Yeah. I just didn't know if you were ready or if you wanted me to take that down.
Well, I was gonna, first of all, if you could switch back to me for a minute, I do need, before we go there, I think we need to talk about the mediums, different mediums first, if you do want to cover politics, because they're, am I back on? Yep, okay. Basically, you know, you've got your traditional news media, which is probably very hard to get into unless you're trying for a job. I don't know how much freelance stuff they take. I know CNN does do opinion pieces and other places as well. But you've got, you know, you've got news mediums, the traditional news mediums. You got TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, and then you online. The world is your oyster. You know, you've got, if you don't want to pitch and you just want to write, of course you can join Medium and other places. Where I started was, I think it was the precursor to Medium, possibly. It was lit. Oh God, what was it called? It changed into Yahoo Voices, but before that it was Associated Content. You got paid a little bit. But anyway, you could just put your stuff on there, and people, lots of people, you'd get a lot of hits, a lot of views. So you can do that, you know, if you don't want to pitch. But if you want to pitch, I think, and you haven't done anything before in politics, I think it would be better to start with local publications and see what's going on locally. In local elections, local ballot issues, those kind of things. What issues are important to people? You could do a video for YouTube. You could just go around with your phone and do things. It's amazing. Things have changed so much in such a short time. In my career, it's just off the chain how drastically different things are right now. When I was an investigative journalism, we were not allowed to use the internet for any research whatsoever, except for if we were just checking the address of somewhere. We were not allowed to do any research. It was considered what was the word? It just wasn't considered reliable source material, because we had to answer at the end of the day. We had to have lawyers looking at our stuff before we even aired the show, so we weren't even allowed to. And I didn't even have email. I did it all by phone. I'm going to see and talk to people, and we can still do that. If you got the time. Obviously, I was getting paid for doing it. I even researched UFO alien abduction one time too for the show. They would have done a show if somebody would have talked, but anyway, that's besides the point. But so if you want to just go out and do your own thing, you can absolutely do that these days, and there's a platform for you. It's not just for and I've debated about whether that's a good or a bad thing for many years, and I'll give you an example why I initially thought this was a bad thing. I don't know if you guys remember Joe the plumber. Anybody remember Joe the plumber? I can't see people, so it's really weird. I can't see anyone nodding. I'm assuming people are nodding yes. Maybe I should go to the gallery, see if anyone.
Go to the gallery.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone remember Joe the plumber? Yes. So I wrote in actually, this is another thing that me and Karen were talking about earlier too. If you want to sort of avoid getting bashed in the comment section of a piece, but you really want to say something, you can use humor and satire, which is what I did with this piece about, I called it Job Hopping Joe. Plumber turned foreign correspondent hastens death of journalism was my subheading. Basically, Joe the plumber had been offered a job by a news website, what they call themselves a news website, and he was going to be a foreign correspondent, and they were going to send him to the Gaza Strip and Israel to cover Middle Eastern issues, the Middle East peace process. Joe the plumber, this one was, and my piece basically was saying that, and this was my opinion back then. It's changed slightly right now. It was a bit snobby because I was a trained journalist and producer, and and my title, I guess, did my time, and here's a plumber getting a correspondent job, foreign correspondent job with no credentials, nothing, which is how it is now, right? With citizen journalism, with YouTube, with Medium, and I don't think it's such a bad thing anymore. In small doses, so long as we have trained people with experience doing it as well. And but anyway, I was not very kind to Joe the plumber back here in 2009, and my last few lines is, journalism, the end is nigh, said not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. And so I basically said, if Joe the plumber is a journalist, then journalism is on its last legs. So, but anyway, I don't think that's absolutely the case anymore. I think there's room for other voices, especially because, you know, I don't want to get political here, but, you know, the news, the traditional news media is owned by such a small, I think it's 6 companies own all of them. And they all have agendas. Like ABC is owned by Disney, so you're never going to get, you know, anything investigative about Disney, you know what I mean, on that show. So that was something that we had to watch when I worked for HTV in Wales. We had to be careful, but again, we had lawyers, which helps, and we did really go for the jugular. We upset a lot of people, and that was the point of our shows. And I don't know if that's done as much anymore. I think journalism is a little softer than it used to be. I think even Newsweek and Time are not as, and correct me if I'm wrong later, but I just think the standard of journalism, especially political journalism, is not as high as it could be, and not as balanced as it could be. So that's my opinion as a journalist who has been covering politics for a long time, and it's an observation that's obvious to a lot of people, which is why people have gone away from cable news and network news to other sources, and the internet. What, in the past 10 years maybe? It's when did Facebook come? It was about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years. Has it been that long? Well, everything changed with social media, and political coverage has just not been quite the same since then. But anyway, let's get back to those questions. So there's different mediums that you can work in. Can we get back to the slides, Karen, please?
Here we go. You see it?
Okay, yep. So what topics to cover? If you were to cover politics in any form, whether it's writing, whatever kind of writing that would be, if it was opinion, if it was news, if you wanted to pitch a research-heavy piece, whatever you want to do. If you want to do a piece on YouTube, what would you cover? Well, there's so much that you can choose from. You can obviously, you know, look at the presidential candidates themselves right now, which is very, very topical, of course. You can look at ballot issues. You can look at breaking political news stories. And this would be good for opinion pieces. You've got to get them out there quickly if you're trying for places like the New York Times or the Guardian. The Guardian are notoriously bad for not getting back to people, by the way. And or the Atlantic, the online .com Atlantic. Then you can look at national issues. Right now, that would be something topical, would be healthcare, gun control. They're usually all the same, right? They don't change that much. Gun control, abortion is always an issue, healthcare, women's rights, all these kind of topics that you can look at. You can find a local angle on a national topic and do something from that. And when these with these really timely pieces, I think you've got more of a chance to get published and get noticed. I sent something into the Huffington Post, and by the way, tomorrow I will share the editor's name if anyone's interested, because they actually got back to me and they asked me to write, I had sent them a pitch and they asked me to write a piece, an essay, personal essay. And they discussed it and then they decided not to pursue it, which was a pity really, because it was very, very timely. But what I did, and I would advise people to do this with timely stuff too, is like I sent it out and I only waited a day before following up because it was timely. And right now, you know, things are changing so quickly. It was about my immigration issue, so immigration stuff is always in the news right now. But anyway, so, and they did get back to me and did look at it really quickly. And the other people that I pitched, who was it? It was Slate, I think. The only reason they didn't take my pieces because they had another one very similar. I was so upset. But anyway, so but it is okay, because usually, you know, you wait 1 or 2 weeks before following up with these timely pieces right now. And I think this would apply with politics too, closer to the election. Just say, hey, this is since this is a timely issue, I'm just seeing if you've had a chance to look at my piece, and then they'll get back to you. Especially, you know, if it's a good idea. And personal essays are great, and opinion pieces are great. There's New York Times opinion, there's Huffington Post, there's Slate, there's Vice, there's all these places that you can look at. Because you can look at local politics and pitch your local newspaper, local magazines. I've noticed Raleigh Magazine does a lot of stuff on planning issues. So take a look at Raleigh Magazine copies. They do a lot of stuff. They really do cover planning issues if there's something big going on with new structures, new buildings, new plans. State politics is always a good one. There's always something going on, and federal politics, of course. And then, of course, don't forget international and global politics as well. Those are something that you can look at as well. Karen, can we go to the next one, please?
Sure. Would you like to do the poll on this one while we've got it up?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put up a poll for everybody.
I don't know how this works, so this will be interesting.
Yeah. Well, we're experimenting. Okay. So we're experimenting. So I'm going to launch the polling, and it's going to have the same options that are on the PowerPoint.
Oh, cool.
And you get to vote. Like, you should be able to look at the questions and click which ones, if you were doing political reporting, which of these types of topics would you be interested in? And so I can start to see.
All.
I can see we're starting to get some responses. We've got about
great.
a quarter of the people have responded, and I'll show you the results when we.
Oh, excellent.
When they come in, you'll get to see what everybody's kind of interested in.
No presidential candidates yet. No one has a thick skin. I'm just kidding. National issues is getting a lot of attention here.
Yeah.
I feel like a commentator now. State politics and local politics, almost neck and neck. Right now, 0. Oh, we've got a presidential candidate hit. Yay. Okay.
All right.
Breaking news.
Got about 5 more seconds, and I'm gonna close this one and let you see
international
the results.
politics. Wow.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna end polling now with 92% of the vote in.
And the winner is national issues.
Yeah, so you can see where the interest levels were in the group.
That's very interesting. So national issues, state politics, and local politics.
Can everybody see that okay? Go ahead and unmute and let us know.
One of the big things is healthcare on that line, D.
Yes.
Healthcare, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very topical.
Yeah.
I picked the local and state politics. I've been involved with several candidates, and this year, like, the Commissioner for Agriculture to me is like one of the most dynamic people I've ever met. You know, Jenna Wadsworth, the Democratic candidate. I mean, she's like ready to do climate change and I mean, you don't usually think about that with the Commissioner of Agriculture. You got Steve Troxler in there now. You know, you're thinking about pigs and farms. And she just was this breath of fresh air. And I think there's just a lot of dynamic stuff going on in North Carolina right now. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll mute myself.
All right.
No, keep it coming.
So shall I stop sharing this and move on to the next slide, Allison?
Does anyone else have something to share? I'd be interested to hear. We've got, what was the next one? It was state. Okay, so we got national issues, state politics, and the next one was local politics. So that's kind of, so who would cover national issues, and where would, what, anybody want to say anything about that?
Sure, I'll say something about that.
Hey, Maya, hi.
Hi. I think healthcare was a big issue even before, this whole pandemic hit. A lot of people were have been very concerned about healthcare, just through their own personal experiences with the healthcare system. And now that we're in the middle of this pandemic, a lot of ongoing problems that have been present in the American healthcare system are just being brought to light, with the pandemic. So yeah, I think that's probably a big reason why national issues such as healthcare is a popular topic now.
Great, thanks, Maya. Then you should cover it. You should pitch Huffington Post. I'll give you some names.
Okay.
Also, just before I forget, I think it's Slate. I don't know who's familiar with Slate. Maya's nodding. They have coronavirus diaries, and they actually got back to me very, very quickly about my idea. They said no, but only because they already had something similar. So that's something obviously topical, not political, but well, it could be. But if somebody's got a personal essay about what they're experiencing now or what they're observing, or etc., I think that would be a good place. And it's called the Coronavirus Diaries on Slate. And I'm sure they're still taking submissions. Also, Huffington Post is a good one too. So,
Okay, Allison, I'm going to move you on to the next slide. I'm just doing a time check. It's almost 20 after 8. So.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Yep.
You should have stopped me before.
So do you want to talk about anything here, or do you want to try a poll on this one?
So I can't see right now what I said. Hold on.
What form
okay,
you want
if
to
you
work
wanted,
in?
okay. So if you wanted to pursue political, let's call it journalism, because we've included different things here, video and podcast. What form would you want to work in? And by form, blogs, columns, opinion pieces, reporting, feature, video, podcast, and like we talked about, humor and satire. So,
Can we launch the poll?
yes. Oh, I thought it was already up. This is a different one. Okay,
right.
sorry.
I'm giving you can see them on the PowerPoint. That is like it is the fallback position if technology fails and the polling doesn't work. You could always take the A, B, C, D, E and put it in the chat.
Oh my goodness, 100% humor, satire. Opinion, blog, column. People are changing their minds. It was going down. It's like, it's like there.
Get 81% of the voting in. Give me about 10 more seconds. Make your selections. No going back.
Who's going to be president? Oh.
Right. We're at 92% of the voting. I'm going to call it good. And here we go. Here's what people are interested in writing.
Okay, so we've got opinion and blog. And of course, those are and then no video people here. Oh, it's not, it's really easy with iPhones now, by the way. But anyway, podcast and a lot of humor, satire, and not many features. I see. So and I think the blog and the opinion is the easiest to do because you're
What's
not.
the difference? Allison,
A
what's
blog?
the difference?
What's the difference between an opinion and a blog?
Yes.
So a blog, an opinion piece is something that you would be writing for a publication, and you're talking about. I think it's just the platform. I would say because a blog is a little bit more casual. You can be opinionated in a blog, but blog is usually shorter. I would say an opinion piece usually has more, possibly more specific information. If you were doing something for the Guardian or the New York Times, for instance, you would want to put a few little facts and figures in there to support your argument. So you're making when you're doing an opinion piece, you're making an argument for something or against something, or you're putting your point of view out there. And with a blog, is I would say it's a little more casual. And obviously, you can have a blog on your own site. You can guest blog. Does anyone else have a better definition of a blog? What is a blog? Maya, what would you define? Putting Maya on the spot. I would say.
Yeah, I would just say a blog is just simply something that you post either on your own website or on another person's.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that would be considered guest blogging.
Yeah.
Like if I posted something on Allison's website, I would basically just be sending her a guest blog to be featured on her website.
Yeah,
but there's very serious material also on blogs. You're really talking, I think you hit it on the nail, Allison, when you said earlier, it's really a difference in formats.
Yeah, and platform, I would say too.
Yeah.
It's a very good question, and you stumped me.
But with a blog,
it's an excellent question.
Wouldn't it mostly be the same people that read your blog all the time that would say it? I don't think you would approach.
Well, yeah, it
others.
Could be.
I don't think other people would come to read your blog. Whereas if they say an opinion piece in a newspaper, you're giving your opinion to the whole field.
Yeah.
Blog, it's the same people
I share my
listen to you all the
links.
time.
I share links on Twitter and Facebook, and so people come to my blog.
Yeah.
Whereas I only read the paper once a week, so.
Yeah, there's lots of people who follow certain opinion makers.
You can write a blog
blogs.
article and push publish, and it's out there.
Yeah. An opinion piece, especially, if it's going to New York Times or, even in a local newspaper, it's going to be edited and they're going to do fact checking and all that kind of stuff. Because if it's on, how do I put this nicely? A serious website, right?
Well, there are very serious websites.
Yeah, but I'm just what I'm saying is a blog, and this is no offense to bloggers. And I was reading up about this beforehand, actually, blogging versus journalism. Bloggers, journalists. Technically, no, I would say, unless you are a journalist who blogs. But
a lot of them do now.
So maybe Allison, maybe we should move to the next question because it is actually on platform a little bit more.
Okay, so platform, yes.
Yeah, so so where would you want to be published?
Okay, so if you wanted to pursue where you want to be published, so do you want to, the local newspaper is a great place. Indie print publications like the Indie Week and Mountain Express in Asheville, and Westwood in Denver. I don't know anymore. Independent news websites. I included both ends of the political spectrum here, Vice and Breitbart. Is that how you say it? Whatever your viewpoint is. And it's very important that all of them are covered. And then there's national print and national websites like the Huffington Post, like we were talking about, magazines. And of course, a lot of magazines have websites now too. And blogs. Here we go, blogs. Whatever is the definition of blogs is. You know, a blog is, you know, you could have your own blog. You could do your own opinion pieces on Medium. I used to do them on Associated Content before I started working for websites. There were a couple of websites that I worked for with, they wouldn't be called legitimate news sites. They were just independent websites, and we talked about all kinds of stuff, but they wanted me to talk about politics specifically. So
how about we launch the polling to see where people are interested in publishing?
If it's ready.
Yep, here we go. Last poll.
Magazine.
It's fascinating to watch. I know you guys can't see it while it's happening, but I can see.
Yeah, I can see it. Magazines is in the lead, followed closely by independent news websites and local newspapers. And way behind is national print. Well, not way behind now. Actually, they're catching up with national websites.
So we got about 74% of the vote in.
Okay.
We'll give you about 10 more seconds.
Magazines. Nobody has put up blogs. Nobody has. I don't.
All right, we got 81% in. I'm gonna close it down. Going, gone.
Okay, we did have some blogs. Okay, I just couldn't see.
All right, so there you can see the
Magazines.
results.
Magazines is the winner. That surprises me.
I bet Dawn said yes.
I was the first.
Yeah, you're the only one in magazines.
Yeah.
It's my wheelhouse. What can I say?
I don't know
I
any
voted
blog that
twice.
pays, so.
It was rigged.
I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that was the hardest one to get published in.
Yep.
Sorry. But who am I?
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing the poll results.
Okay.
And Allison, just a time check. We're at about 8:30, so I want to make
Yeah.
sure you have a chance to wrap up anything you want to
I'm-
say and open things up for questions.
I'm done. Basically, you know, it's journalism in general has drastically changed since I started as a newspaper reporter, covering sheep days and sailing and local planning. It's just drastically changed, and it's opened doors and it's closed some too. You know, we've got the fake news thing that we didn't have before. There was no such thing when I was, you know, starting out. So yeah, it's changed, and it's very fascinating. And it was great to be a part of all that change. I went through digitization in 2 countries too, television digitization. So I saw it on, and it's just different dynamics in different countries too. It's a very different audience, I would say. And
Does anybody have questions that they want to bring up? You can type them in the chat. I see that there are a few people who've had to leave, which is fine. You know, they had to get to other meetings and dinner and stuff like that. Feel free to type a question in the chat, or just to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment.
I think Atricia had one, or her screen name is Nene. You want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I was just commenting on your earlier, well, asking a question on your earlier comment about like having to be like aggressive and very bold in this particular field. How did you balance between needing to be aggressive and times where politeness was just as effective? So how do you determine the difference?
Well, when I needed help, obviously, you know, from the councilman, I was obviously, you know, very nice and humble. But when I wanted to, and I really believed in when I was at the Clinton rally, I believed that I should be let in. You know, community television should not have been shut out. You know, just because it's, you know, not CNN or whatever. And the fact is, you know, I think it's still the same, isn't it? That the freelancers can't get a press pass, which is largely unfair. Is that true, Don? Is it still the case?
I think so, yeah. Most magazine reporters who, like for Esquire, GQ, Vanity Fair, all those guys have press passes for the publications they work for. If it was a freelancer like me and I wanted to sell, I would have to get a press pass from the agency that I'm writing for. You can make one up that just says you're a freelance writer, but it doesn't carry the weight or gravitas of having an actual card with the New York Times on it or something like that. So yeah, freelance writers tend to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, this is one I had, I forgot to show this. I forgot to mention that I worked on a documentary with a Welsh politician who is a, I don't know if you can see that, but it says White House press pool in 2010. We were filming in DC, and in DC, you have to have credentials to film, and this was my temporary international journalist press pass. I got all my press passes here. I was going to show these. Here's the one for Obama. Here's Hillary Clinton. And here's my, this was my Colorado. Oh no, this is my HTV one. I don't know where my Colorado one is, but I used to have a press pass because you did get one of PBS. It's just that, you know, as a freelancer, I wasn't able to get one. I did pursue it. And I would have thought, you know, you could make a case if you've had experience and you've had one before. But the only reason I got this White House press pull one was because I was working contract for Tenopolis, which is quite a well-known production company. I got to go to the Tea Party rally, and it was hilarious because the MP I was working with, he is a openly gay socialist, and not democratic socialist. He's the actual socialist, right? And he works for Plaid. He's now the leader of Plaid Comedy, and he's a really tall guy with a skinhead, and so he looks like he looks like, how do I say this? He looks like a white nationalist, right? He really does. I mean, because he's got this crooked and he's really tall and he wore this suit, and he, you know, he's a gay socialist, and it was just really hilarious when he was walking around this Tea Party rally in DC that we got to film at, yeah, so we went around 5 states talking about the midterm elections, and we got to I got to go to another Obama rally in Boston at the convention center, so we got to film him again. And I couldn't get my camera to work properly, and oh my God, it was a nightmare because I had to do the actual filming, and it wasn't my own project, so everything went wrong. And so it was like,
Allison,
we have time for about one more question before we need to turn it over to Don.
Did I answer your question? Did I answer your question? I think you have to be pushy, right? If you, I think pushy more than aggressive, like, and just state your case. You know, I have a right. We have a right to be here and cover this as much as anyone else. because we have an
Allison,
audience too.
how many
You know?
reporters does the BBC have embedded in the United States, like you, who are covering American politics?
I'm what they call a what do they call me? A contractor. They just call me when they need me, and it's usually I have like maybe if half a day to prepare, maybe a day. Sometimes one time I had an hour to prepare. Sometimes they're live, most of the times they're tape, and sometimes it's on TV. So sometimes I do Skype, and sometimes, you know, things happen.
Are there a lot of reporters like you for the BBC in the United States?
I seem to be on there quite a bit. I seem to be their go-to person because they first of all, they know me from working in the media in Wales, and second of all, they know I'll deliver, and second of all, they know I'm always make myself available. So that's another thing, you know. You always say yes, right? Because if they don't ask you,
work.
What's that?
Never turn down work.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And another thing, you know, because I used to be looking for guests all the time. You wouldn't get a hold of people, and you had to fill a show. You had to fill seats in a show. They'll just go to the next person. That's what I used to do. I had to go to the next person because I needed to fill the show. So, you know, you say yes immediately, and you make yourself available, and you just do it. So, did I answer your question? Who was, is it Nay?
My name is Patricia.
Patricia, sorry, I see
No,
Nay.
that's fine. It's my screen name.
Oh,
yes,
right.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, where are you? Are you?
In Wake Forest.
In Wake Forest, okay. Is my California person here? Did my California person make it? The student? No? Is that you?
Hi, sorry. I go to school in California, but I live in Washington State.
Oh, you live in Washington State. Sorry. Okay.
No,
So are you back home?
Yes, I am back home. I was actually studying abroad in the Czech Republic for the semester until the pandemic happened, and so I got sent home, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's a story.
Yeah. For all the
Seriously.
students. Yeah.
And you are you doing journalism?
Yes, I'm a documentary and broadcast journalism major at Chapman University.
And you're interested in covering politics?
Yeah, I'm a politics minor, so I'm interested in all kinds of journalism, but I think this is an important part of reporting, and that's kind of what dominates the news, is at least in America right now. So
yeah. Same thing in Britain.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, glad you made it. Allison, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure people can come to her with questions after the
by the way, can I have a show of hands? Do you want me to share the Huffington Post and all that information slate? Yes.
Yes. Please
Okay.
do, Allison.
Okay, will do.
And I'm going to turn it over to you now. I think you had a few things you wanted to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Allison. This was wonderful, and we really appreciate it. And Karen, again, thank you for, and Rita too, for facilitating everything this evening. I think it went great. I wanted to, before we close, I wanted to let everybody know, and I haven't made this formal announcement to the group yet, but our guest speaker for our May meeting is going to be Paula Murphy, who's the managing editor of Boys Life magazine. And our scheduled guest speaker for our June meeting, assuming that we are still online and haven't gone back to in-person meetings, will be Cassandra Lipp, who is the managing editor of Writer's Digest. Both of them have formally confirmed for May and June. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think that's going to be great fun. Before we leave, does anybody have any good news to share? Any sales or anything at all to share with the group real quick?
I do.
Nancy?
I do. My 28th book came out. Here's a picture of the cover, which is gorgeous. Heaven Sent Flame. It's the third book in my Warriors in Bronze history, series, and it takes place mainly at the fictional Raleigh Art Museum, based on the North Carolina Museum of Art, which I see behind you. I see the rings. Yeah.
Is that what
So,
that is?
yeah, so
That's
I'm
wonderful,
still
Nancy.
working.
Congratulations on that. Does anyone else have anything to share? Anything at all?
Come on, guys. Everybody's writing, right?
I'll share this for your amusement. I managed a mention in Hunting and Fishing Collectibles magazine
All right.
this month. I advised a person who lives in Durham and is a decoy carver, an outstanding decoy carver, as he wrote a remembrance of one of their people. So I got the mention of, let's see, last but not least, my hat goes off to Terry Boggess, a great writer and editor. So
Awesome.
there I am.
Congratulations.
That's great.
That's
Collectibles
terrific.
magazine.
Anna, you had something to share?
I do. I'm getting a lot of poetry done, and I'm also working on my book, so I am getting lots of writing done finally.
Well, I'm happy to note that I got 2 more brief assignments from Boys Life magazine, and I'm more than 5,000 words into Cannibal Cruise and having a really great time with this. So
Excellent.
anybody else before I know the clock is ticking down here?
I can make one comment. I can make one comment. If anybody has any last minute things to submit for the anthology, just let me know and I can hold it up for another day or 2.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll wait for you.
Okay.
All right, everybody, I think we're good to go on this.
Thanks,
Allison,
Allison.
thank you again for everything. This was a wonderful talk. Really appreciate it. Love your
Thank you.
stories and all that. And thanks to everybody who joined us this evening. We had 32 people at one point, which is just a wonderful attendance. And I hope we can keep this up. And if you haven't registered for Saturday's conference, you still can. We're going to be closing registration tomorrow night. So you're still that. And we were at 50 last time I checked. So I'm really excited about that as well.
And just to clarify, that is a free conference, right?
It is absolutely free. It costs you nothing but your time. Yeah, but you do need to register.
Sure, though,
Cool.
and you do need to be.
What? Karin?
Me. Think it's
Breaking up.
You're glitchy, Karen. Can you get a little closer to the mic?
Glitchy.
We'll hope to see you guys on Saturday.
Just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Close everything off now.
All right. Thank you, Karin.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Everybody
everybody.
stay safe.
Bye, Allison.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.